And he tried, he was game, but every time he threw one or two, Inoue came back with 4s and 5s and 6s.
Yeah, credit goes to Picasso for putting a great show on. He pushed Inoue back at times, but Inoue was just too good. I mean, he was too classy, he was sharp, them body shots, head shots, I mean, he was just beating him to every punch.
It's almost like a body stab, isn't it? He really puts a lot of weight into those body shots.
He's a great finisher. I think he's the best finisher in boxing. He's Joe Louis, he's Mike Tyson, he's Jack Dempsey. 3 of the greatest finishers in the history of the sport. He's all of them.
Japanese fighter is the best fighter. In my opinion, I'm nobody, but I think he's the best fighter. He's 122 now, right?
He's 122, he'd be going to 135.
Why don't they fight 132 something?
Naoya Inoue just sent a message that has the entire boxing world shook, and what happened after his destruction of Alan Picasso is absolutely wild. We're not talking about just another dominant performance here. This was a statement fight that has champions across multiple divisions questioning whether they even want to be in the same ring as this monster. From the opening bell, Inoue didn't just outbox Picasso, he completely dismantled him with surgical precision that left veteran fighters and analysts stunned. The speed differential was embarrassing. The power shots to the body had Picasso visibly wincing by round 3. And the technical mastery. It was like watching a master class in how to systematically break down an opponent without even breaking a sweat.
21.5 pounds for the undisputed world champion. 121.1 pounds for the undefeated challenger, David Picasso. Here they are, face to face, 24 hours from stepping into the ring. Challenger and champion both undefeated. David Picasso. Naoya the Master Inoue.
But here's where it gets absolutely insane. Within hours of that final bell, boxing professionals from every major division started flooding social media, podcasts, and interviews with reactions that ranged from pure admiration to genuine fear. Former champions who have been in there with killers are calling this performance a masterclass in violence. Current title holders at 122 pounds are suddenly finding excuses to avoid mandatory defenses. And get this, multiple promoters have already started reaching out to Inoue's team, not to make fights, but to gauge whether he's even interested in moving up in weight. Because here's the reality nobody wants to admit. There might not be a single fighter at super bantamweight who can deal with what we just witnessed. The gap between Inoue and the rest of the division isn't just significant. It's starting to look like he's operating on a completely different level of boxing evolution.
Tried, he was game, but every time he threw 1 or 2, Inoue came back with 4s and 5s and 6s.
Yeah, credit goes to Picasso for putting a great show on. He pushed Inoue back at times, but Inoue was just too good. I mean, he was too classy, he was sharp, them body shots, head shots, I mean, he was just beating him to every punch.
It's almost like a body stab, isn't it? He really puts a lot of weight into those body shots.
We were sat ringside and we could hear the noise of them punches.
Yeah.
And I was telling you, wow, did he hear that noise? I mean, he has power, he has speed, movement, you name it. But I just feel that Picasso just fell short this time. He did a great job though. Honestly, when you look at the fight, he did not give up. Every minute of the fight, he was still there in front of him.
Yeah, you wonder if Picasso, if that's any other super bantamweight not named Inoue, you wonder if Picasso maybe would have got his hand raised, because he did look really good in there.
Yeah,
Darren.
And there was moments you felt he was trying to grow into the contest, but it was just the class and the level of Inoue that just stopped his man building any momentum. But against anyone else, you feel he could have been a real hard night's work. I don't want to discredit anything that Picasso's done there. He tried, he dared to be great. He was just in there with an elite level fighter. Look, just didn't have the one punch power, because he's delivered a nice left hook there. And look, again, I said it with Nakatani, you're always learning still with 31 bouts under your in your career, you're still having to learn. And there's a couple of moments there where he took a couple of silly shots.
Now listen to this part, because it shows you just how much respect Inoue commands even in defeat of his opponents. Former world champion Amir Khan, who knows what it's like to face elite competition and get dropped by devastating power, immediately came to Alan Picasso's defense after those lopsided scorecards came out. Khan wasn't making excuses for the loss, but he was making sure people understood what Picasso had just survived. According to Khan, stepping into the ring with a pound-for-pound elite like Inoue isn't just another fight. It's a career-defining test that most fighters would never even attempt. The fact that Picasso went the full 12 rounds, absorbed those vicious body shots, and kept coming forward despite being completely outclassed. Khan called it the kind of heart and resilience that makes boxing beautiful, even when you're watching someone get systematically dismantled.
I'm proud of the fact that I put Inoue on my pound-for-pound list, I don't know, 3 years ago. Whatever it was, I don't even know how long.
That's true.
And no one...
You've been on him before I even knew who he was.
Ken, no one had him anywhere near it. They basically barely knew who he was, as you just touched on. And obviously he dominated Fulton, or at least put it this way, he established control right from the start. He made Fulton's a defensive fighter, a good counterpuncher. He made him concentrate more on defense and surviving than Fulton really wanted to early. He set the course of the fight, the mentality of the fight, the theme of the fight, right from the start. Inoue just never let Fulton really get anything started, or, as I said, any rhythm. He used his jab, again, similar to Crawford. The jab was very important for Inoue and for Fulton. Very important. Most important weapon of the night. Inoue used his jab to stabilize Fulton on the outside. Then he plays good body shots to take some of his legs away. He was placing beautiful body shots. He stepped out of range very effectively, controlling distance. He was very good defensively. You know, everyone talked about Fulton's defense. Inoue's defense. Yeah, he's a great offensive fighter.
Here's the kicker, though, and this is what separates the real boxing minds from the casual observers. Renowned analyst Teddy Atlas dropped a bombshell revelation that changes how we need to look at Inoue's entire career trajectory. Atlas admitted he placed Naoya Inoue as his #1 pound-for-pound fighter 3 years ago, long before the mainstream boxing world caught up to what he was seeing. 3 years ago. When most American fans barely knew Inoue's name, Atlas was already recognizing the defensive brilliance, the ring IQ, and the systematic approach that would eventually make Inoue unstoppable. But here's what's really wild about Atlas's analysis. He's not just praising what Inoue has accomplished. He's mapping out a path that could lead to Manny Pacquiao-level legendary status. The same Teddy Atlas who's seen every great fighter of the modern era is suggesting Inoue has the potential to become the next 8-division world champion. However, and this is crucial, Atlas also issued a warning that should make every Inoue fan pay attention. Moving up in weight has different limits for every fighter, and those limits often reveal themselves when you least expect them.
Inoue can become a multiple weight world champion. So I'm thinking, what if one day we fight at 140? I'm talking about future, and we do it in Japan. It'll be huge, huge. Mark my words. If it somehow plays out that way, I think that fight will be one of the biggest pay-per-views of all time.
But wait, it gets even more interesting when you hear what active fighters are saying about potentially sharing the ring with this monster. Ryan Garcia, who's never been shy about calling out big names or talking trash about elite competition, had a completely different tone when discussing Naoya Inoue. Garcia openly admitted that Inoue has the potential to become a multi-weight world champion. But then he said something that caught everyone off guard. He expressed genuine interest in facing Inoue in the future. Now think about this for a second. Ryan Garcia, who built his reputation on lightning-fast hands and devastating power, is essentially acknowledging that fighting Inoue would be the ultimate test of his skills. This isn't Garcia trying to build hype or start beef. This is a legitimate recognition that Inoue represents the highest level of competition available in boxing today. And the fact that Garcia is actively pursuing that challenge instead of avoiding it tells you everything you need to know about how much respect Inoue has earned from his peers.
Say the monster is multi-dimensional.
Yeah, of course.
But have you seen him legitimately be multi-dimensional?
Yeah.
From a standpoint of being able, obviously we know he can punch.
Yeah.
We've seen
Hold up, because the praise keeps coming from champions who know what greatness looks like. Shawn Porter, former welterweight world champion and someone who's been in there with the absolute best fighters of his generation, made a statement about Inoue that should have every boxing fan paying attention. Porter didn't just praise Inoue's performances, he specifically highlighted the eye-catching and impressive nature of his fighting style, suggesting that Inoue has the charisma and skill set to capture the American audience in a way that Japanese fighters historically haven't been able to achieve. This is huge, because Porter understands the business side of boxing better than most. He's not just talking about Inoue's technical abilities, he's recognizing the star power and entertainment value that could make Inoue a crossover superstar in the American market. When a former champion starts talking about a fighter's ability to transcend cultural and geographic boundaries, you know you're witnessing something special.
Him stay on the outside and counterpunch.
Do you think that's what he's gonna have to do against Fulton now?
It's not the point. The point is you just...
And get this, the boxing world might be about to witness one of the biggest fights in Japanese boxing history, and it's all because of what happened on that card in Riyadh. After Inoue's dominant unanimous decision victory over Picasso, both he and fellow Japanese superstar Junto Nakatani scored impressive wins on the same card, setting up what promoters are calling a potential super fight that could define both fighters' legacies. We're talking about Inoue versus Nakatani at the Tokyo Dome in 2025, a fight that would represent the biggest all-Japanese boxing showdown in decades. Inoue himself hinted at something massive on the horizon, acknowledging that both he and Nakatani had strong performances, and suggesting that Japanese fans should expect something very special in the near future. The implications of this potential matchup are staggering. You'd have two undefeated Japanese champions at the peak of their powers, fighting in front of what could be the largest crowd either has ever faced, with undisputed championship implications and national pride on the line.
Japan, it is huge. I mean, this is like probably billboards all over the place type of fight, huge in Japan. So, I really, if it's in the conversation, could you see any other fight that Inoue could do that really could be this big? He could go up to featherweight and fight for the world featherweight championship. I don't know if it would be as big as this. Inoue Nakatani right now is probably the biggest fight for both guys for several reasons. And
now here's what makes Naoya Inoue truly terrifying to face, and why fighters across multiple divisions are starting to have nightmares about potentially sharing the ring with him. It's not just the speed, though his hand speed is legitimately frightening. It's not just the power, though his knockout ability speaks for itself. It's the psychological warfare that begins the moment you agree to fight him. Opponents know they're not just battling against superior skills. They're enduring the mental pressure of facing someone who never backs down, never shows mercy, and never stops coming forward. The reputation precedes him now. Fighters know that when they step into the ring with the monster, they're facing someone who delivers devastating knockouts with surgical precision. The fear is real, and it's affecting how fighters approach negotiations, training camps, and even their performance once they're actually in there with him.
From Japan, Inoue. So when you see he got the victory over Cool Boy Steph. Cool Boy Steph, he's not a heavy puncher, good boxer. But far as, Inoue, it was a Filipino fighter, he had fought twice. Donaire. So Donaire was giving him fits in the first fight. And if I'm not mistaken, Donaire was somewhere close to 40 or 40 years old when he fought him the first time. Whereas he was in his 20s. So he should have knocked him out in the first fight. Fighting a guy, like I said before, at that age. What I need Inoue to do is, I need him to come fight in the US, random blood, urine testing. I think he's a hell of a fighter. I won't take nothing away from him. Hell of a fighter. And I like him because I see he take a lot.
But here's where Inoue's terrifying reputation gets backed up by cold, hard tactical brilliance that had Alan Picasso completely helpless by the middle rounds. Throughout those 12 rounds, Inoue repeatedly targeted Picasso's midsection with hard, perfectly timed body shots that gradually broke down the Mexican challenger's will to engage. These weren't just power punches thrown hoping to land. These were calculated attacks designed to slow Picasso's forward movement and disrupt his rhythm. By round 6, you could see the cumulative effect taking hold. Picasso's stance began to narrow as he tried to protect his ribs. His counters became less sharp and less frequent. His footwork slowed noticeably. The signs were obvious to anyone who understood what they were watching. Inoue's consistent bodywork was systematically destroying Picasso's ability to compete at a high level. This is what separates elite fighters from good fighters, the ability to implement a game plan that gradually breaks down your opponent's physical and mental defenses.
Use that to set something up to get a guy going. He only really lets his hands go if his opponents are hurt. That's just who he is. I actually appreciate that about him. You know, it does a few things. One, it keeps him safe because it's basically a defense mechanism. If I'm not wild and loose, you can't really counter me, or I just won't slip up and do something stupid. So there's not a whole lot that I'm giving you, basically, as an opponent. Not a lot that I'm giving you. But also, it preserves energy. And he can preserve energy. I mean, the guys at that weight, you know, they're a whole lot smaller, so they can definitely preserve energy. But when you're throwing those single shots like he does, it preserves energy. So he's still fresh in the championship rounds.
Listen, I'm about to tell you something that's going to shock you, and it shows just how controversial opinions about Inoue can get even among boxing insiders. Promoter Eddie Hearn, who's worked with some of the biggest names in boxing and knows talent when he sees it, has taken what might be the most controversial stance on Naoya Inoue you'll ever hear. Hearn actually called Inoue a disappointment to Japan. Let that sink in for a second. While the entire boxing world is praising Inoue as potentially the greatest pound-for-pound fighter alive, Eddie Hearn is suggesting he's somehow failed to live up to expectations. But it gets even more wild. Hearn went further and claimed that Inoue has actively ducked Murodjon Akhmadaliev twice, suggesting that the monster has been avoiding legitimate challenges to protect his undefeated record. This is the kind of accusation that can destroy a fighter's reputation if it gains traction, and it's coming from one of the most influential promoters in the sport.
This fight, when I saw the two men get into the ring, the first thing that I noticed straight away was Picasso was carrying an incredibly high guard, defensively keeping his gloves very, very high, trying to protect his chin. And one thing I'll say in general about Picasso in this fight is that his defensive awareness was very, very impressive. He very rarely dropped his hands after he threw a shot. His discipline was incredibly good. But the problem with that is that sometimes it leaves a lack of room for creativity with fighters. Yes, it's important to be defensively disciplined, but if you continue to give the same look over and over again, you're never ever going to beat a guy like Inoue. The first thing I said at the beginning of my live about this guy was I looked at him and I went, his elbows are incredibly flared. You know, he had the high guard, but his elbows was very, very far forwards, which instantly made me think he's giving the body to Inoue. He's offering it to him. Now, that can sometimes be done because it's to create counter-punching opportunities, but in this instance, I think it was just that he was so concerned about protecting.
Here's what really tells you about Inoue's character and his pursuit of perfection, something that separates true champions from fighters who are just happy to win. Despite earning a dominant unanimous decision that had most observers calling it a masterclass performance, Inoue admitted in his post-fight interview that he wasn't fully satisfied with how he performed. Think about that for a second. He completely controlled the fight from start to finish, won every round on most scorecards, and systematically broke down a world-class opponent, but he still felt there was room for improvement. Inoue explained that he'd been really tired after a busy 2025 campaign, and that the fatigue affected his execution, even though the results didn't show it. This is the mindset of someone who isn't just trying to win fights, he's trying to achieve perfection every time he steps into the ring. And when a fighter of Inoue's caliber says he's going to rest and come back stronger, that should terrify everyone in his division.
Night for Inoue, and Inoue took it. He took the invitation and he constantly stabbed to the body of Picasso. And in fact, I'd say that this fight kind of was a story of the body shots in many ways. Picasso, like Inoue, had most of his success to the body. The left hook in particular was a money shot for Picasso, but the difference between these two men was so obvious to see when they were standing in the pocket and they were exchanging left hooks in particular to the body. The impact of Inoue's shots was totally different from Picasso's. It was like Picasso had cushions, pillows inside his gloves, and Inoue had a bloody egg weight. It was damaging, it was vicious, and Picasso simply couldn't hang in the pocket for long periods of time with Inoue. I mentioned the lead hand of Inoue there to the body, but the lead hand of Inoue in general in this fight was incredible to see. I mean, the sharpness, the speed on it, the different levels that he throws it from, it's unbelievably unpredictable.
So there you have it. Naoya Inoue just delivered another dominant performance that has champions questioning their career choices, legends comparing him to Manny Pacquiao, and an entire division running scared. But this isn't just about one fight or one performance. This is about watching a generational talent systematically work his way toward legendary status while the boxing world tries to figure out who can possibly challenge him. Whether it's the potential super fight with Nakatani, the controversial opinions from Eddie Hearn, or the growing recognition from American fighters and fans, one thing is crystal clear. We're witnessing something historic unfold in real time. Here's my question for you. Drop it in the comments. Do you think anyone at 122 pounds can legitimately challenge Inoue right now, or is he already too far ahead of the competition? If this breakdown helped you understand why the boxing world is so shook right now, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell because Inoue's next move is going to send even bigger shockwaves through the sport. I'll see you in the next one.
Devastated, disappointing for boxing, disappointing for Japan. Being honest with you, it's just a horrific mismatch. It's hard to say Inoue's ducking Akhmadaliev, but he actually is. I'm telling you now, Inoue will not fight Akhmadaliev at any point. I bet you he doesn't fight in September or December Akhmadaliev, even though he's been ordered to do it. And I bet he vacates the belt as well. 4 fight fans in Japan, 4 fight fans around the world. The only fight that is
But before you click off this video, I need to tell you about the absolutely mind-blowing statistical breakdown that just dropped. And it reveals exactly why Inoue isn't just dominant. He's operating in a completely different universe than every other fighter in his division. The Compu box numbers from the Picasso fight paint a picture that's almost impossible to believe. Inoue landed 52% of his total punches thrown, which is already an elite level of accuracy. But here's the kicker. He connected on 61% of his power shots. 61%. Against a world-class opponent who was specifically prepared for his style and had months to study his tendencies. To put that in perspective, most elite fighters are thrilled to land 35% of their power punches against top-level competition. Inoue was landing nearly 2 out of every 3 hard shots he threw, while simultaneously making Picasso miss on 73% of his attempts. These aren't just impressive numbers. These are video game statistics that suggest Inoue has achieved a level of technical mastery that borders on the supernatural.
Yeah, I'll tell you something, Inoue against MJ is one of the best fights in boxing. And I have to respect Inoue for taking it because the people around him didn't want to take that fight. And I kind of feel like I goaded them enough to take it. And I'm very pleased they took it because I see it as a 50-50 fight. 2 best fighters in the division, the best fight.
And here's what makes those numbers even more terrifying for future opponents. The punch selection data shows that Inoue wasn't just throwing wild power shots hoping to score a knockout. His most effective combinations were perfectly timed 3- and 4-punch sequences that started with a jab to set up distance, followed by devastating hooks to the body, and finished with uppercuts or straight rights that consistently found their target. The precision was surgical. Picasso's corner could see what was coming. They were screaming instructions to move, to counter, to tie up. But their fighter simply couldn't execute fast enough to avoid the systematic destruction that was unfolding. This is what happens when exceptional natural ability meets years of obsessive technical refinement. Inoue has reached a point where he's not just beating opponents, he's solving them like mathematical equations.
Magazine, congratulations on the victory. You mentioned during your post-fight interview that you were a bit tired. Is that down to the 4 fights a year schedule? Is that the reason why you're tired?
リングマガジンからです、試合の直後のインタビューでちょっと疲れたとおっしゃってましたけれども、それは4つ試合をこなしたそういうスケジュールのためにお疲れになっているんでしょうか。
まあそれも含めて今日の試合の内容も含め、終わってちょっとどっと疲れたなという感想です。
Yes, that's one of the reasons. But after tonight's performance, when I finished the fight.
Now let me blow your mind with something that happened behind the scenes after this fight, because it shows you just how much respect Inoue commands from people who understand elite-level boxing. Multiple trainers who work with current world champions reached out to Inoue's team, not to schedule fights, but to ask if they could bring their fighters to observe his training sessions. Think about this for a second. These are coaches who have guided fighters to world titles, who have decades of experience at the highest levels of the sport, and they want their champions to study Inoue's preparation methods like he's a textbook case study in boxing perfection. One prominent trainer, who asked to remain anonymous, admitted that watching Inoue's systematic breakdown of Picasso made him completely rethink his approach to body punching and distance management. He said it was like watching someone discover new applications for techniques that have existed for decades, but never been executed with that level of precision and timing. But here's where things get absolutely wild, and this is information that most casual boxing fans will never hear about. The Japanese Boxing Commission released internal metrics from Inoue's recent fights that reveal something extraordinary about his physical conditioning and recovery capabilities. According to their data, Inoue's heart rate during the championship rounds against elite opponents remains lower than most fighters' heart rates during regular sparring sessions. His oxygen efficiency is off the charts. His muscle recovery between rounds shows almost no deterioration from round 1 to round 12. These aren't just impressive athletic markers. They suggest that Inoue has achieved a level of physical preparation that allows him to maintain peak performance while his opponents are gradually breaking down under the accumulated stress of trying to match his pace. It's like he's playing a completely different game while everyone else is still learning the basic rules. And get this, because it shows you just how much the landscape of boxing is changing because of what Inoue brings to the table. 3 separate television networks have reached out to his promotional team about featuring him in primetime specials that would focus on his training methods, his mental preparation, and his systematic approach to breaking down opponents. These aren't just typical fighter documentaries. They're talking about educational content that would break down his techniques for both casual fans and serious students of boxing. ESPN's production team specifically mentioned wanting to create a series that examines how Inoue's approach represents the evolution of modern boxing science. When major networks start treating a fighter like a case study in athletic excellence rather than just entertainment, you know you're witnessing someone who's transcending the sport itself. Here's something that should make every boxing fan sit up and pay attention, because it involves one of the most respected voices in the sport making a prediction that could reshape how we think about Inoue's future. Hall of Fame trainer Freddie Roach, who guided Manny Pacquiao through his legendary career and knows what it takes to dominate multiple weight classes, made a statement about Inoue that sent shockwaves through the boxing community. Roach didn't just praise Inoue's current abilities, he specifically said that if Inoue continues developing at his current rate, he could become the most technically complete fighter in boxing history. Coming from someone who's worked with Pacquiao, Miguel Cotto, and countless other elite fighters, this isn't casual praise. This is a professional assessment from someone who's seen greatness up close. Roach went on to explain that Inoue's combination of natural gifts and obsessive work ethic reminds him of the young Pacquiao, but with even better defensive instincts and ring IQ. But wait, it gets even more interesting when you hear what's happening with the betting markets and how professional gamblers are starting to view Inoue fights as almost impossible to bet against. Major sportsbooks have started limiting the amount of money they'll accept on Inoue to win his fights, not because they're worried about losing money on upsets, but because the action is so heavily skewed in his favor that it's becoming impossible to balance their books. Professional handicappers who make their living analyzing fighter matchups have started referring to Inoue fights as business decisions rather than competitive sporting events. One prominent Vegas oddsmaker admitted that setting lines for Inoue's fights has become more about predicting the method of victory rather than trying to determine who's going to win. When the gambling industry, which has the most accurate assessment of true probabilities in sports, starts treating a fighter like an inevitable force of nature, that tells you everything you need to know about his level of dominance. Now here's what's really going to shock you, and it shows just how much Inoue's reputation has grown beyond just hardcore boxing circles. 3 major Hollywood production companies have approached his management team about developing biographical films based on his career, and we're not talking about low-budget sports movies. These are major studios with A-list talent attached, talking about productions that would chronicle his rise from promising amateur to undisputed world champion. The most interesting part? They want to focus on the psychological aspects of his dominance, the mental warfare that begins long before fighters step into the ring with him. One producer specifically mentioned wanting to explore how Inoue's reputation has become so intimidating that opponents are mentally defeated before the first bell rings. When Hollywood starts viewing a fighter's story as compelling enough for major motion pictures, you know their impact extends far beyond just winning fights. Listen to this, because it reveals something about Inoue's character that makes him even more dangerous than his physical abilities suggest. In a recent interview with Japanese media, Inoue admitted that he studies footage of his opponents not just to identify their weaknesses, but to understand their psychological makeup and fighting spirit. He explained that every fighter reveals their mental state through subtle body language cues, breathing patterns, and reaction timing that most people never notice. Inoue has developed the ability to read these psychological tells in real time during fights, allowing him to adjust his tactics not just based on what's working physically, but based on his opponent's mental state and confidence level. This is next-level fight IQ that goes far beyond traditional boxing strategy. He's not just outboxing opponents, he's outthinking them on multiple levels simultaneously. And here's something that's going to blow your mind about what happened in the immediate aftermath of the Picasso fight, because it shows you just how much influence Inoue now has on the entire boxing landscape. Within 48 hours of his victory, 4 different world champions in adjacent weight classes made public statements about their future plans, and every single one of them mentioned Inoue either as inspiration or as a measuring stick for their own careers. This wasn't coordinated. These were independent responses from fighters who recognized that Inoue has set a new standard for what elite-level boxing looks like. One current champion specifically said that watching Inoue's systematic destruction of quality opponents has forced him to completely reevaluate his own training methods and tactical approach. When your dominance starts influencing how other world champions prepare for their own fights, you've transcended being just another good fighter and become a transformational force in the sport.